All right, Joellen, let's talk a little bit about Abelia.
Abelia, yeah.
Yes.
It's, it's always been one of my favorite shrubs because it has a bloom time that starts in about June, then goes clear till frost. So, I've used it, but it's more of like your grandmother's plant, the Abelia grandiflora.
Okay.
Grand.
Grand.
It gets about 6 feet tall. And so that's why it kind of limits the use in the landscape. But luckily, there are new hybrids out there, which is why it's exciting to talk about Abelia. There is another one that I liked, which I did use in my landscape, is called Goucher.
Okay.
And Goucher, unfortunately, is deciduous, which is the drawback of it.
Oh, gotcha.
So, but you get these beautiful lavender pink blooms, in the summer, all summer long.
Okay.
But they're not as prolific as the other grandifloras. Okay. So, deciduous, bigger flowers, nicer flowers, smaller plant. It was not a whole lot to choose from. Now we've got some good stuff. Okay. There has been one called Sherwood. Now the Sherwood eye, he gets about 2.5 to 3 feet tall and rounded. They're compact, bloom all summer long, and have evergreen foliage. And from Sherwood came Little Richard. And Little Richard is even more compact than Sherwood, because Sherwood can get taller than the 3 feet that it's usually labeled as. John Creech is another one that has come out of the Sherwoods, and he's smaller. All of these have different kind of winter colors and a little bit bronzing on some of them. And of course, then there's one that's come out that is the lowest growing of all, and it's called Prostrata.
Wow.
And it gets 1.5 to 2 feet tall, and there's a lot of people who use that for banks and things like that. And it will do well under a window, in front of somebody's house for the landscaping. Okay. Also blooms all summer long. So what evergreen foliage blooms all summer long. The problem is our zone that this is in is 6 to 9, so we're in 7. Okay. And a lot of these stay evergreen here. Further north of 6 and sometimes in 6, if they get a zone 5 winter, it might kill the foliage back. Okay. So it might lose some of its foliage, but it'll come back. Okay. Okay. So that's really no problem. But now the most interesting things that have come out are the colored foliage abelias. And there's one that's called Golden Glow, which is, of course, sounds golden and yellow color, and yes, it is. And it has pink flowers. Can you imagine pink flowers on gold foliage all summer long? That sounds really nice. Confetti is another one.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's got cream-colored margins on its leaves, and then it blooms. And then in the wintertime, those white creamy margins turn kind of pinkish. So you get a little bit of a leaf change color in that one. Okay. And they're about 1.5 to 2 feet tall. So see, these are all staying small, even the dwarf ones. The colored ones. Kaleidoscope, now Kaleidoscope is a little bit bigger, but it has multicolored foliage, which is very pretty. And then it blooms then from June through frost. Okay. So you've got this nice creamy white to pink flowers on top of this variegated foliage. Very nice. And so a lot of people are talking about it because they're fairly hardy and looks nice in the landscape. What do Abelia, where do they like to live? All right. Where does Abelia like to live? It likes to live in a well-drained soil. Now, you say, well, soils around here are not well-drained. Well, just got to be careful. Just try to create a situation. Don't plant it somewhere that the soil is going to stay wet all the time. Okay. Because it'll start getting leaf spots and things that it normally would not get. Because this Abelias are usually insect and disease-free.
Oh, that's even better.
I know. There's not a whole lot that bothers them. Right. And of course, they can tolerate drought. In fact, around town, I have actually seen them in islands in the middle of the streets. And they're blooming their heads off.
Right, and we know nobody's taking care of those, right?
No.
For the most part.
No, so I mean, it's a really a good,
that's good.
A landscape plant. Okay. Of course, the pH, it is adaptable. It's not real particular, which makes it even a better urban landscape plant. And it likes full sun to part shade. So now you got to think about this. When it's in full sun, it's going to have shorter internodes between the leaves, so it's going to be more compact, and there's going to be more blooms because there's more energy for the blooms. So the more shade you're going to give this, the more larger the leaves are going to get, the less blooms it might have. And some people I've known, just because the variegated foliage in some of these, they've put them in a pretty shady situation, but they don't really care because the foliage itself is so pretty that they don't mind having less blooms.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. And of course, like I said, some of them are, there's one's listed Miss Lemon. It's a beautiful variegation on it, and it has really pretty flowers on top of it. In fact, it's known for its flowering, but it's deciduous in this area.
Ah, okay.
So, you know, but that's okay, you know, for the time of year when you're actually going to be outside a lot in the summer and in the spring, fall, and summer. You know, you'll see it with the foliage and blooming.
Okay. Now, as far as taking care of them, right? Everybody's going to ask about pruning.
Yes.
So, old wood, new wood, what is it growing?
Well, Abelia grows, it blooms on current season's growth.
Current season, okay.
So it is suggested that you prune it first thing in the spring.
Okay.
Real early in the spring, and get it into the shape that you want. Normally, a lot of these you don't have to, they are naturally growing in a small mounding situation. But if you want to keep it under control and you want it even smaller
Which
than
most
what it
people
normally
will want to do.
want to do,
Yeah.
just don't shear it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is small leafed, and you could do that with it, but it would be better just to kind of selectively prune it down as you need to. Some of these are the larger Abelia are multi-trunked, multi-stemmed.
Okay.
And what you do is you go in and you take the smallest, the oldest stems out every few years. And then, of course, keep it down as you need to. But 3 feet is still not terribly bad.
That's not
4
bad at
feet,
all, yeah.
you know, 3, 4 feet. I mean, that's not a bad size for a landscape plant.
Okay. And let me touch on this before you end, because I know Mr. D appreciate this. Deer resistant.
This is deer resistant. And since it blooms all the time, you know, it attracts pollinators like butterflies and bees.
Okay, so that's plus, another plus.
You've got all of these qualities on these, and Abelia is just not well used in the landscape, and it should be used more.
We appreciate that, Joellen. Yeah, we need to start using that a little bit more. I see Mr. D is actually nodding his head in approval.
Yeah, you know, I've had some experience with the older ones, and the only problem I had with it was it was at my front door, and I had to kind of keep it pruned back. It kept growing out there, but as far as any problem or anything, insect or disease, nothing. So I'm real interested in these, especially the dwarf forms.
All right, well, appreciate that again, Joellen. Hopefully more people will plant those. All right.
Hope so.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please click the subscribe button below.